This episode is brought to you by Daryl Margot and her legendary quote, "The lack of planning on your side doesn't constitute an emergency on mine."
Welcome to the Stephan Dyer podcast, my people.
Hello, my people! ¿Cómo están, damas y caballeros? Welcome to the Stephan Dyer podcast, where I welcome people with remarkable stories for amazingly vulnerable conversations. My name is Stephan Dyer, former banker turned comedian and lifestyle entrepreneur. And this episode with myself is gonna be amazing. I've decided to do an in-between-isode, as Tim Ferriss calls them, where I literally share my knowledge on something that I'm really passionate about that I think could add so much value to your lives. So, over the past years, since I became a banker turned comedian in 2017, I became obsessed with high performance. I became obsessed with productivity. And how can I do things better? Because at the time when I quit my job as a banker to become a comedian, I was 29. I wasn't, on paper, the funniest. It didn't look like I had the highest likelihood of succeeding. And other people who had quit their jobs to do stand-up comedy full-time or comedy full-time, it seemed like they would have a better shot than doing it full-time than me, and still it didn't work out for them. So what I did was, okay, how can I study other people who have accomplished great things in life already, and copy their habits, their knowledge, and use them as a blueprint to be successful in what I wanted to be successful, which is comedy. And obviously it ended up being more than that, which keynote speaking, corporate training. And one of the things that I became obsessed with is productivity. So this episode is pretty much everything that I've learned over the years so that I could be better at what I was doing to be able to make money off of comedy and teaching and corporate training so that I didn't have to go back to the bank. And voila, spoiler alert, 5 years later, I am here still doing what I love, stand-up comedy for a living. I teach public speaking and comedy, and I do a lot of corporate training and development when it comes to speaking with confidence, improv for team building, and other keynote speaking endeavors. I developed this side project in the pandemic called the Productivity Machine Workshop, a course about happiness and freedom, and I've been teaching this course every month. Now, I was like, why don't I just record a podcast episode and share my knowledge so that people can just have it? They don't even have to take the course. It's a 3-hour course. But, I mean, you don't know. People learn in different ways. So I just decided to give this to the world. And hopefully you will love it. If you like this episode, I always say, share it. You know, why not share the knowledge? So here we go. Bienvenuti, bienvenidos al Productivity Machine Workshop. So what is productivity? Based on the dictionary, it seems like productivity is the effectiveness of productive efforts as measured by the rate of output per unit of input. In other words, it's pretty much just efficiency, being effective. Being efficient, doing more in less time, or doing more with less. I like to see it as doing more in less time so you can free up time for what matters. That's the whole point of this course. How do you free up time by doing things better? So doing more in less time to free up time for whatever matters to you. That can be doing yoga. That can be watching your favorite Netflix series and not feeling guilty. That could be meditating. That could be going to eat at your favorite restaurant. That could be doing nothing. That could be sleeping. The thing is, all of us are like, oh, I don't have time. Oh man, I wish I could go to this with you, but I just don't have time. Which is a blatant lie. It's just that you are horrible at managing your time or not as efficient as you could be. So, doing more in less time. Now, I want to challenge you. If being productive means doing more in less time, then that means that time is the most precious variable in that formula. But don't just think of time as the most precious unrenewable resource. I want you to think of attention, energy, and willpower as also super precious finite resources that you have to protect every day at all costs. What do I mean by that? So think of a video game where you only get 100 units of willpower every day. You have to use these 100 units of willpower to tackle your to-do list every day. Why? Every day? Because when you wake up in the morning, you're rested. And when you're rested, you get mental clarity. And mental clarity means that you have... It's a very key ingredient in being productive. So you have to spend your willpower on the most important tasks that will give you the most, like the more points in the video game. So you want to tackle the most important tasks at the beginning, because if you tackle the easiest tasks, then you're going to end up not satisfied at the end of the day. You're going to end up not satisfied at the end of the week. And if you add that up, you're going to have a not satisfied year. So, why in the morning you have more clarity, more energy, you have more willpower, and if you don't use them on the most important tasks, by 2 p.m. you will have run out of willpower and won't have accomplished much, leading to disappointment. So why do we want to be more productive? I guess if we do more, some people say you could have more money. If you have more money, maybe you could be happier. We'll discuss a little bit about that. Money doesn't necessarily buy happiness, but it does cure the common causes of unhappiness. So money can help. Money can give you freedom, which is in many ways what we want. I want to ask you a question. What would you be doing if you made the same amount of money but did not have to do your current job? And that should be really good. A really good indication of what you would do if you were more productive. If you say, I would like to go to the beach more, then do that. If you say, I would like to work out more, then do that. If you say, I want to do yoga, then do that. So here we go. This story really changed how I felt about lots of things, and I want to share it with you. It's called The Parable of the Mexican Fisherman. Okay. An American investment banker was taking a much-needed vacation in a small coastal Mexican village when a small boat with just one fisherman docked. The boat had several large fresh fish in it. The investment banker was impressed by the quality of the fish and asked the Mexican how long it took to catch them. The Mexican replied, "Only a little, wait." No, I didn't. He said, "Only a little." The banker then asked why he didn't stay out longer and catch more fish. The Mexican fisherman replied he had enough to support his family's immediate needs. The American then asked, "But what do you do with the rest of your time?" The Mexican fisherman replied, "I sleep late, fish a little, play with my children, take a siesta with my wife, stroll into the village each evening where I sip wine and play guitar with my amigos. I have a full and busy life, senor." The investment banker scoffed. "Well, I'm an Ivy League MBA and I could help you. You could spend more time fishing and with the proceeds buy a bigger boat, and with the proceeds from the bigger boat you could buy several boats until eventually you would have a whole fleet of fishing boats. Instead of selling your catch to the middleman, you could sell directly to the processor, eventually opening up your own cannery. You could control the product, processing, and distribution." Then he added, "Of course, you would need to leave this small coastal fishing village and move to Mexico City, where you would run your growing enterprise." The Mexican fisherman asked, "But senor, how long will this take?" The American replied, 15 to 20 years. "But what then?" asked the Mexican. The American laughed and said, "Oh, my friend, that's the best part. When the time is right, you would announce an IPO and sell your company stock to the public and become very, very rich. You could make millions of pesos." He didn't say pesos, I'm just adding that. Millions of dollars. Millions, senor? Then what? To which the American banker replied, "Then you would retire. You could move to a small coastal fishing village where you would sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take a siesta with your wife, stroll to the village in the evenings where you could sip wine and play guitar with your amigos." And the Mexican said, I already do that, senor." And there you go. So, why do you want to be more productive? There's a concept that I want to share with you, and it's called minimum effective dose. And this is really, really important because I want to share some concepts with you that will make you analyze and think about, why do you want more money? Why do you want more time? Why do you want to be more productive? Sometimes you think you need to buy or do something to be happy, but oftentimes the minimum effective dose will do the trick at a much cheaper cost. So, like I said, let's pretend that sometimes you think you need to buy or do something to be happy, and by that I mean happiness level 10. But sometimes the minimum effective dose will get you a happiness level 7 at a much cheaper cost. I always give this example. Somebody will say, "No, I want to buy a Ferrari, and when I have a Ferrari, I'll be happy." Okay, how much is a Ferrari? $300,000. And that'll buy me a level 10 happiness. Okay, but do you have $300,000? Well, no, but only when I have them and I buy the Ferrari, I'll be happy. Okay, how about this? Well, renting a Ferrari for a week is not $300,000. It won't buy you the car, but you can rent it for $3,000, and that'll give you a level 7 happiness and satisfaction. What does that mean? That the minimum effective dose has a superior return on investment, has an extraordinary return on investment. So sometimes, as humans, as workers, as people, as husbands, as wives, as parents, we think that we need this ridiculous thing to be happy. But maybe you don't. Maybe you're just postponing happiness or postponing your satisfaction because you think you need a lot of money to accomplish something. I'll give you a very, very simple example. Sometimes you think, "No, I just finished lunch and I need a big dessert, like a big banana split to be happy. That'll give me a level 10 happiness." But sometimes you don't have that banana split at your disposal, and you just have like a small square, like a little chocolate. And maybe that chocolate will not give you the level 10 satisfaction of the huge banana split, but it'll still do the trick. You eat it, and then after a few minutes, you're like, "Hey, that's okay. That gives me a level 7 satisfaction." So, in the long term, you got satisfied with that small piece of chocolate instead of having to eat a huge banana split that would probably be detrimental to your health in the long run if you're having one all the time. So, minimum effective dose. That's a very, very important pillar. Now, this is the most important thing that I'll probably say in this episode. What is your hourly rate? And a lot of these things that I'm going to say today are by the great Naval. You should listen to the episode, How to Get Rich, on the Naval podcast. It's 3 hours, and it changed my life. I probably listened to it like 24 times. A lot of these concepts that I'm saying today, some of them are there. So what is your hourly rate? I want you to ask yourself as you're listening to this, how much does your hour cost? And I want you to set, if you don't know, or you know still, set and enforce an aspirational personal hourly rate. If fixing a problem will save you less than your hourly rate, ignore it. If outsourcing a task will cost less than your hourly rate, outsource it. I'm going to play a small clip of Naval's episode on YouTube because it's critical. And then we'll continue the episode.
So we covered the skills that you need to get rich. So that was specific knowledge, accountability, leverage, judgment, and lifelong learning. Let's talk a little bit about the importance of working hard and valuing your time.
So no one is going to value you more than you value yourself. So you just have to set a very high personal hourly rate and you have to stick to it. So even since when I was young, I just decided that I was worth a lot more than the market thought I was worth, but I started treating myself that way. So always factor your time into every decision. How much time does it take? Oh, it's going to take me an hour to get across town to get this thing. Well, I value myself at $100 an hour. That's basically throwing $100 out of my pocket. Am I going to do that? You buy something from Amazon, they screwed it up, you have to return it. Is it worth your time to return it? Is it worth the mental hassle? Keep in mind that you have less work hours, you have less mentally high output hours. Do you want to use them to run errands and solve little problems, or do you want to save them for the big stuff? All the great scientists were terrible at managing their household life. None of them had a clean, organized room or, made all their social events on time or sent their thank you cards. You can spend your life however you want, but if you want to get rich, it has to be your number one overwhelming desire, which means that it has to come before anything else, which means you can't be penny pinching. This is what people don't understand. You can penny pinch your way to a basic sustenance. You can keep your expenses low, maybe retire early and not spend too much, and that's perfectly valid. But we're here to talk about wealth creation. And if you're going to do that, then that has to be your number one overwhelming priority. So fast forward to your wealthy self and pick some intermediate hourly rate. For me, believe it or not, back when you could have hired me, which now obviously you can't, but back when you could have hired me, and this was true a decade ago or even 2 decades ago before I had any real money, my hourly rate, I used to say to myself over and over, is $5,000 an hour. Today, when I look back, really, it was about $1,000 an hour. And of course, I still ended up doing stupid things like arguing with the electrician or returning the broken speaker, but I shouldn't have. And I did a lot less than any of my friends would. And I would make a theatrical show out of throwing something in the trash pile or giving it to Salvation Army rather than trying to return it, or handing something to people rather than trying to fix it. I would argue with my girlfriends and even today to my wife, like, I don't do that. That's not a problem that I solve. I still argue that with my mother when she hands me like little to-dos. I just don't do that. I would rather hire you an assistant. And this was true even when I didn't have money. Another way of thinking about something is that if you can outsource something or not do something for less than your hourly rate, outsource it or don't do it. So if you can hire someone to do it for less than your hourly rate, hire them. That even includes things like cooking. Now, you may want to eat your healthy home-cooked meals, but if you can outsource it, do that instead. And I know some people will say, well, what about the joy of life? And what about getting it right just your way? Sure, you can do that, but you're not going to be wealthy because now you've made something else a priority. Paul Graham basically said it pretty well for Y Combinator startups. He said you should be working on your product and getting product market fit, and you should be exercising and eating healthy. Like, that's about it. That's kind of all you have time for while you're on this mission. So set a very high hourly aspirational rate for yourself and stick to it. And it should seem and feel absurdly high. If it doesn't, it's not high enough. And whatever you picked, my advice to you would be raise it. Like I said, for myself, even before I had money, for the longest time, I used $5,000 an hour. And if you extrapolate that out into what it looks like as an annual salary, it's multiple millions of dollars per year. Ironically, I actually think I've beaten it. When I look back, because I'm not the hardest working person, I'm actually kind of a lazy person. So I work through bursts of energy where I'm really motivated with something. So if I actually look at how much I've earned per actual hour that I put in, it's probably quite a bit higher than that.
Boom. Nothing more to say. I think this is key. So I'm just going to give you a couple of examples in my life. So, Naval already said this one, but basically, if you order something like a sweater or a t-shirt on Amazon, and it comes to your house, the sweater is $25. Let's call it a t-shirt. It's $25, but it arrives damaged. If it takes you like 3 hours between like printing the stuff, packaging it up again, interrupting the work task, driving to return it, doing so, coming back, another time just to refocus on the task at hand, 3 hours of your time to really get back $25, it's not worth your time. in my example, so Naval said $5,000 is worth his hour. I mean, he's a multi-millionaire. My hour, I constantly tell myself that is 250 hours. That's what my hour is worth. So, in my example, am I going to spend 3 hours of my time? So $750 of my time to return a $25 damaged shirt? Of course not. I'm going to donate it. Well, you could say, well, yeah, but those $750, it's not cash. It's not actual cash. But the $25 that I'm getting back is, yeah. But like Naval said, if you want to get rich, or if you want to be really good at your job and get a promotion and obviously get more money from the promotion, you can't be sweating the small stuff. You can't be penny pinching. You can't be like driving. One of my students in this course was like, you know what, I took like hours just to find the best deals in all the supermarkets that would save me like 49 cents. And then I would drive to all the supermarkets just to get the best deal of every product that I would buy in grocery shopping. And then he's like, I can't believe I've been doing that for years. Think about it. He's spending tens of hours a year, hundreds of hours maybe, saving $8 a month. It's ridiculous. So, now, think about the things that you're doing where you could apply this concept. Another thing. I hate going grocery shopping. And it takes 3 hours of my time. Plus, I go with my wife and my baby. So that's time that we could be spending as a family together doing something else. First of all, I hate grocery shopping. It gets me in a bad mood. I don't like the supermarket. I feel like a loser. I don't really cook well. It gets me in a bad temper. But if I hire Walmart or another service to bring it to my house, it costs me $10 for them to bring it to my house versus 3 hours of my time that I could be using to do something else. So $750 of my time, I'm using it to go to Walmart. First of all, if I use that time to spend it with my family, I would love it even more. Because getting the groceries to my house just cost me $10. And then another way to look at it is maybe I could just use those 3 hours to sell a corporate workshop to a bank or to an engineering firm, like Speaking with Confidence or Improv for Team Building, that would charge like $3,000 or $5,000. And I would use those 3 hours so much better. Another example. I hate cleaning my house. I hate it. And for some reason, we clean it on Sundays. And how much is it? 4 hours of our time. We clean it like once a month, and my wife tries to convince me that we should do it, and I'm always like, let's hire someone to clean the house. How much are they going to charge us? First of all, if people coming to clean the house, they clean houses. They're probably better than us at cleaning houses because they've done it for so much time. They do better. They've done thousands of iterations. So how much does it cost me to hire someone to clean my house here in Toronto for 3 hours? Let's say $120 versus 4 hours of my time and my wife's time, clearly, and my son's time, Liam, because we're not going to fully be with him. That's like $1,000 of my time plus my wife's time plus Liam's time. So why don't we outsource it, use those 4 hours to do something more productive that could even make us more money than the $120, or to spend time as a family, which obviously I value more than $120. So think, what's your hourly rate? And I'm not just talking about like at nights when you're having fun or whatever. I'm talking, let's just focus right now for this example, because it's more applicable to your life, for your work. Are you constantly interrupting your work or your career or your sports training? Could you be doing something more productive with your time? Are you constantly going to the grocery store to just buy like milk, or to buy like one thing? Or are you constantly interrupting what you do best, which gives you more money, to go do things all across town, as opposed to having a Zoom meeting or a call, or as opposed to hiring an Uber or somebody to bring it to your house? Think about it, because the more you interrupt your tasks and you penny pinch, you're interrupting the momentum of the things that you do best. And because you do them best, you charge more money, ideally, and this could get you more money in the future because it would be compounded and you would improve, you would get momentum. Amazing. The next concept is just mental clarity. As I said before, mental clarity is a key ingredient for productivity. It's hard to be productive, creative, and effective when you are stressed and you have 3 million things on your mind. So remember, being unhappy is inefficient. It's unproductive. So, how can we achieve more mental clarity to be more effective and efficient at the things we do? And because we're going to do them better, we're going to finish them in less time and free up time for the things that really matter. So I've identified 4 main things that will get you the mental clarity for you to be laser focused on the task at hand. And these are meditation, minimalism, sports or exercise, and journaling. So it's not that hard, Meditation, I'm going to recommend a couple of apps later. Minimalism, I'm going to recommend some documentaries, but there's 2 documentaries on Netflix called The Minimalists. Exercise, it's self-explanatory. And journaling, there's this book called The Artist's Way that changed my life. And you have to journal 3 pages, handwritten, every day in the morning as soon as you wake up. And it explains that your mind is like a dam, like a water dam, where you need to put your thoughts on paper so that new thoughts can come. But if you don't put them, it's like a dam. You got to open the floodgates so that the water can pass, in other words, your thoughts and your worries, and you can have new thoughts and you can have mental clarity to perform better. Because if you have the same thoughts pretty much every day, it's hard to be creative. Now, the next concept is called peace of mind versus peace from mind. This is something that Naval also talks about, and I got it from his podcast. Really changed how I viewed things. A lot of people say that they want peace of mind, but what they really want is peace from mind. You don't want to have a mind that's peaceful. A lot of people don't want a mind that's peaceful. They don't want to be in their mind at all. They don't want to listen to that voice. So they want peace from the mind. They want to be away from the mind. So a lot of people, to relax and to get away from the mind, to get peace from the mind, they do extreme sports. So you'll see a lot of people with, I like to surf or I like to snowboard. Guess what? Because when you're surfing, you're on top of the wave. You're not like, I should have sent that email. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I should have not yelled at my team or at my boss. You're literally in the moment and you have peace from the mind. You're literally just doing whatever you're doing and you have peace from whatever else. So, what things are you doing that could get you peace from the mind to quiet that voice? Exercise is great. Soccer is great. That's why a lot of people like to go to the beach, because at the beach you can't do anything but be at the beach, except those people who are on their phones on the beach. But typically a lot of people just like to be on the beach because you can't do anything but be on the beach, then be on the beach. A lot of people like to go to the beach. They don't even go into the ocean. That just goes to show that they love the freedom and the peace from mind that you get at the beach. That's one of the reasons why I love going to hotels, because at hotels there's nothing else that I can do but be in the room, and there's nothing that I need to manage or clean or think about, which means I don't have a to-do list when I'm at that hotel room, especially when it's like you just got in it. All right, the next one is leverage. Leverage is the other very key concept, and leverage is a force multiplier for whatever you're doing. In other words, it exponentially makes explode whatever you're doing. And there's 3 types of leverage: labor, capital, and the third one, the most powerful, is products with no marginal cost of replication. So I'll just go into them a little bit, but again, Naval goes into it like a boss on his podcast. I'm going to put it in the notes because you just need, this is like a must. So there's 3 types of leverage: labor, capital, and products with no marginal cost of replication. And the third one is permissionless, which is really good. So how can you multiply whatever you're doing at your company? If you're producing one widget, you got to hire more labor to produce a second widget. Or you got to have capital to buy a machine that can produce more widgets. So you have to have permission. So for labor, to hire more people, people have to follow you. It's permission based. For capital, someone has to give it to you. You got to get permission. But the last one is permissionless. Products with no marginal cost of replication. It's permissionless. You don't need anybody's permission. It started with the printing press, went on to broadcast media, and it exploded with the internet. This includes books, media, movies, and code. Code is probably the most powerful form of permissionless leverage, because all you need is a computer. You don't need anybody's permission. Examples: Uber, Facebook, Google, Airbnb. So for even podcasts. So basically, the internet is amazing leverage because you can multiply your efforts without involving other humans and without needing money from other humans. This podcast is a great example of permissionless leverage. Before, I needed to, if I want 1 million people to listen to this episode 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago, I would have needed to go to probably 1,000 auditoriums with 1,000 people each to reach 1 million people. But now, I just click a button and boom, 1 million people could easily hear me. And I don't need permission from anybody. The internet and coding gives me permissionless leverage. Like the great Archimedes says, give me a lever long enough and a place to stand, and I will move the world. He probably said it in Greek, but you get the point. So, my friends, we've come to the end of this little section called the pillars of productivity. So we talked about what is productivity, why do you want to be more productive, and these 4 key concepts. Minimum effective dose, what is your hourly rate, mental clarity, and leverage. Now we're going to jump into general tips. So, one of the things that I really recommend is plan your week. Every Sunday, I plan my week, my upcoming week, for 1 hour. I come into this room where I record the podcast, which is in my house, my little studio, my little office, and I plan ahead my week. So every weeknight, so let's say a Tuesday night, I come here at nights, and I take 5 minutes to plan my next day. The most important thing is to prioritize all the items on your to-do list and schedule the most important items on your calendar, because if it gets scheduled, it gets done. Doing this will save you hours during the week. You think it doesn't happen, but it will save you hours of thinking and planning during the week, also known as decision fatigue. When you wake up, you're like, oh, what should I wear? Or what email should I respond first? Or what project should I respond first? So you end up picking the easiest one, and maybe that doesn't get you as many points. It's not as productive for you. So I'll just really go into this to-do list, or how to prioritize. It's very important that you keep your to-do list all in one place, all in one notebook. I have this little book called the Productivity Planner. I'll also put that in the show notes. And that really helps me. I write everything in one page, all my to-do list, all my priorities. It also, pro tip, you could categorize these priorities in terms of your most important areas of your life. So, for example, I have several categories. For example, Rethink, which is my corporate training and development company. Malpensando, my comedy school. Stephan Dyer comedy. So what I do as a comedian. The Stephan Dyer podcast is another area. Not working to networking is another area. These meetups that I host for professional Latinos in Canada. Then I have the ones that everybody has. Relationships and family, finances, health, personal development, fun, and other. So you could, under all these categories of your life, you could basically write all your to-do lists. Then, once you have all your to-do lists, probably 20, 15, 12 for that week, then you will prioritize them from 1 to 15. And that's very important because 1 to 5 is what you're going to spend all your energy this week killing it. So ask yourself, if these were the only tasks you completed during the week, would you be satisfied? So number 1 to 5 on that huge to-do list has to answer this question with a yes. So pick your 5 most important tasks of the week so at the end of the week, you are going to be satisfied if you complete them. 6 to 10 on that to-do list is going to be secondary tasks of importance. So do these only after you have completed the top 5 tasks. And then 11 to 15, only do these additional tasks once you've completed the above 1 to 10 tasks. So, how does the day-to-day look like? I basically only assign myself 3 important tasks every day. Don't assign yourself 27 things a day because you'll not accomplish them and then you'll end up feeling horrible every time. Getting 3 done makes you feel like you won the day and builds confidence and momentum. Again, ask yourself on a day-to-day. So, for example, Tuesday, ask yourself, if these were the only 3 things I completed today, would I be satisfied? And the answer should be yes by picking these 3. Another thing that I always say is, when it comes to to-do lists and being productive is, for example, if you want to read 60 books a year, you may set a goal of reading 1 hour per day. But this could be your New Year's resolution. So on January 1st, you're like, yeah, I'm going to read 1 hour a day to read 60 books a year. And what happens? You do it. You actually read the 1 hour a day. The next day, yeah, no, I'm still excited. I'm still motivated. And then you read the 1 hour a day. But then the 5th day, you only have 40 minutes to read. And then you're like, no, I'm not going to read 40 minutes because my hour is 1 hour. My goal is 1 hour. So you don't do it that day. Then the next day, you only have 25 minutes, and then you don't do it because you're like, I didn't do it yesterday. My hour is 1 hour. My goal is 1 hour or nothing. And then what happens by the 10th day? You drop the goal in and of itself. Like, you're not doing it anymore. So what I recommend is, instead of saying, I gotta read 1 hour to read 60 books a year, try and do it the other way. Let's flip it around. Instead, commit to reading 5 minutes a day, which is easy. And some people will say, no, that's mediocre. Hear me out. Commit to reading 5 minutes a day. And what happens? It's so easy and doable that you're very likely to end up reading more than 5 minutes every day because you're already there. And as a result, indirectly, you will end up reading the desired 60 books a year. In other words, focus on building the habit, and the goal will come in by itself as a result. There's another challenge that a lot of people do is instead of doing a to-do list, you could do a stop-doing list. Here, I just want to take a couple seconds to recommend a book, and it's the One Thing book. And the One Thing book changed my life, and basically the premise is there is the one thing question that you have to ask yourself every day. And the question goes like this: what's the one thing I can do today such that by doing it, everything else will become easier or unnecessary? What's the one thing I can do today such that by doing it, everything else will become easier or unnecessary? You can also add a fill in the blank after today. So you could say, what's the one thing I can do today in my fitness life, such that by doing it, everything else will become easier or unnecessary? What's the one thing I can do today in my family life? What's the one thing I can do today in my lifestyle, in my personal development, in my spiritual journey, in my financial life? What's the one thing I can do today for my business, such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? Key. That question, I actually have it printed in front of my desk every day, and I look at it. The next one is the concept and myth of multitasking. People think that they're better because they multitask, but this is a fallacy. It doesn't exist, and it's proven by countless studies. So this is a really good tip. So what's the difference between multitasking and chunking? Multitasking is the performance of more than one task at the same time. Well, often this means that you don't do any of those tasks well. Chunking, on the other hand, is recommended. It's when you combine two activities together that don't detract from the other. So by doing one, it doesn't take away from the other. So for example, listening to audiobooks or podcasts when you work out, having a meeting while walking, stretching while watching TV, doing breathing exercises while sitting in front of your computer, listening to an audio program while driving, doing food prep on Sundays when you listen to music. I don't think you're going to cook worse if you're listening to music, unless you're very a crazy dancer. But doing these two tasks together, it's chunking and it doesn't take away from the other. So don't multitask, but yes, do chunking. The Pomodoro Technique is our fifth general tip right here, and the Pomodoro Technique is probably the one that most of you know. And the Pomodoro Technique is basically doing one thing for 25 minutes. And you just do one thing. So a Pomodoro is a 25-minute unit where you do not interrupt the task at hand, whatever happens, for 25 minutes. So you're only doing whatever you're doing for 25 minutes. After each Pomodoro, take a 5-minute break and then repeat. So maybe a task will take you 3 Pomodoros. But I guarantee you, because I've tested this for at least 2 years now, I've one Pomodoro, so one uninterrupted 25-minute unit where I'm only doing whatever I'm doing, I'll probably accomplish more than 3 hours with interruptions. It's insane. So put your phone on silent, do not disturb, turn it off, leave it in another room, and use Pomodoros. What I do is I go on Google, and in Google I type timer 25 minutes. And that gives me a timer that comes from 25 minutes to 0 minutes. And it's a really good reminder that I just have to focus on that. Another rule that helps me is the 2-minute rule. If it takes less than 2 minutes, do it now. Sometimes I have something on my to-do list that it seems like it'll take 40 minutes because it looks like it probably says negotiate deal with the bank or with this client, or negotiate place, time, and fee with this client. And then I call the client, and it probably took me, the call was an hour and 49 seconds. I mean, a minute and 49 seconds. I'm like, what? This is all it took me? So if it takes less than 2 minutes, do it now. Next one, avoid perfectionism. Perfectionism is just a fear of not being enough. We all have it. It's very, very related to the imposter syndrome. And this is what I say to that. Done is better than perfect. Because complexity is the enemy of execution. So just do it. The other thing that pisses me off is sometimes I do it perfect. I send it, especially when I used to work at the bank, and nobody would notice. Or oh, this is urgent. Can you send me this report? I send it. I'm I didn't even sleep. I went to bed at 3 a.m. doing this report. I send it. Nobody says anything. But if I did it okay, then they would still find it good. And guess what? If I do things okay, done is better than perfect, then at the end of the year, just to pick a number, I would probably do 200 things at work as opposed to doing 32 perfect. And guess who's going to get the promotion? The person who does 200 things really good as opposed to the person who does like 39 things really like perfect. Always arrive early. This is a huge tip. I always arrive early to client calls, to shows, because you may just score a black swan. A black swan is that piece of information that changes everything. It's like Chris Voss, the FBI negotiator, in his book, Never Split the Difference, says that if you know a black swan, it may change the entire negotiation. Some people tell you they don't buy something because of the price, but really it's another reason. So when you arrive early, not just you can fix all the problems, but you can have small talk and make friends with the people who are going to be part of an event. And by doing that, they can tell you critical pieces of information that then you can use in your favor to provide better solutions. So that arriving early has pretty much got me to the other side of the world. It took me to Malaysia to do a TEDx talk because at an event in Toronto of young leaders, I arrived early. I met this lady from India, from Bangladesh. Her name is Shomi, and she happened to be the keynote speaker of the event. But because I arrived really early, I spoke to her, told her my story. She told me hers, and then she was like, at lunch, she was like, "Hey, do you want to come tell your story at a TEDx talk in Malaysia? I'm organizing it." Just because I arrived early, it's ridiculous. Number 9, mental minimalism. Ruthlessly eliminating things you don't need is the best thing for your life. Challenge. Watch the Marie Kondo and the 2 Minimalist documentaries on Netflix. It is insane. You have less things to manage. You have more freedom for what matters. And it leads to more happiness. And number 10 is start with why. Ask yourself why you are doing this. If that means having a picture of your kids in your office or next to your laptop, if that means having a vision board like I have here in my studio, then do it. By having a clear why, it also helps you execute and be more productive. And I have my vision board right here. I have a big wall of my favorite shows that I've done all over Latin America. I have flyers of festivals that I want to be a part of. So it's just very important to have a positive environment because, again, remember, being unhappy is inefficient. So you really want to protect your energy, your willpower, and your attention. Because if you're miserable, it's very hard to be productive and efficient. And that, my friends, concludes part 1 of this Productivity Machine episode. Stay tuned for part 2 next week because we're going to talk about recommendations, productivity tips for your mornings, for technology, for nutrition and resting, what to do at work, books, documentary, podcast recommendation that'll change your life. I guarantee you that if you do these things, you're going to end up saving at least 200 to 300 hours over the next 6 to 12 months, my friends. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, gracias. Stephan Dyer on the Stephan Dyer Podcast. Como no, damas y caballeros. Chao, chao.
Gracias por escuchar el Stephan Dyer Podcast. Arrivederci, my people.